This week on Africa Weekly, we focus on a refuge in Morocco, housing child maids who have escaped exploitation and abuse by their employers. We travel to Mozambique, where the government is hoping to revive the cashew industry and return it to its former glory. And we take you to South Africa, where an unlikely pairing of ballet and rhinos is raising awareness of the plight of the endangered animal. But first, a summary of the stories that made the headlines this week. Thousands of South Africans turned out to bid a final goodbye on Saturday to anti-apartheid icon and Nelson Mandela's former wife, Winnie Mandela. Concluding 10 days of national mourning, the funeral took place in the township of Soweto, where Mandela lived.
Rest in peace, our mama. You fought for us, but what I can tell you, Winnie Mandela didn't die, she multiplied. I, as Mama Joy Chauke, I am Winnie Mandela.
The ceremony closes the final chapter in the history of a woman who leaves behind a conflicted legacy, with implications of violence and corruption tainting her reputation. Violent clashes between students and security forces in the Nigerian capital Niamey on Wednesday left many students injured, some seriously. The students were protesting to demand the reinstatement of 5 classmates who were expelled last month after being accused of assaulting a professor. President Mahamadou Issoufou held talks with student leaders in a bid to defuse the crisis. The Secretary General of the Student Union, Sita Diabiri, said that students had returned to class after calling a truce to allow for negotiations with the government, but vowed to keep up the pressure. Sudan filed a complaint against Egypt at the UN Security Council after the North African country organised voting in its presidential election last month within a border territory claimed by both Khartoum and Egypt. Sudan says the Halayeb Triangle has been part of its sovereign territory since shortly after independence in 1956. Foreign Minister Ibrahim Ghandour said that Egypt has also undertaken some fishing and mining projects in the triangle in recent months. The African Land Forces Summit kicked off in Nigeria on Monday. Hosted by US Army Africa and Armed Forces Nigeria, the week-long seminar brings together land force chiefs from across the continent to strengthen regional partnerships and combat Africa's security challenge. The summit is the single largest gathering on the continent of African senior military leaders and other army chiefs from across the globe. And staying in Nigeria, there were scuffles in Parliament on Wednesday as the ceremonial mace of the upper chamber, a metre-long metal rod traditionally carried by the Senate Speaker upon entering and leaving the chamber, was stolen and whisked out of the building. Parliament cannot convene without the mace, and seizing it has been a long-established tactic to express discontent with parliamentary proceedings. It was later recovered by police under a flyover. And things also became heated in Senegal on Thursday when a fight broke out at the Senegalese National Assembly in Dakar during the examination of a controversial election reform. With less than a year to go before the presidential election, the government wants to increase the number of signatures candidates must collect in order to stand for president, which the opposition says is aimed at limiting and controlling opposition. Several people, including a former premier, protesting against a move to raise the bar for presidential candidates, were arrested. Rabat is home to the Annejda Help Centre, a refuge for thousands of young girls exploited and often abused while working as housemaids by their employers in Morocco. Fatima's parents agreed to let her leave their southern village at the age of 15 to work as a domestic. But when she asked for the money she was owed after her first year, the mistress of the house confiscated her identity papers and blocked her from contacting her family.
I suffered a lot of violence and she never paid me.
Legislation setting the minimum age for household work to 18, a minimum wage, holidays and financial penalties for failure to abide by the rules was passed nearly 2 years ago. Yet there has been little or no assessment of implementation.
It's the end of cashew season, and this processing factory in northern Mozambique is bursting into action. The owner, a Portuguese entrepreneur, has been running the plant for 10 years now, but he says this is just the beginning.
O futuro da indústria para já parece ser promissor.
The future of the industry is promising because there is a strong demand for cashews. We're able to sell all of our production and develop our business. We can even find new markets.
In the 1970s, Mozambique was the world's leading cashew nut producer. But a long civil war and several natural disasters grounded the sector. When peace returned, producers were dealt yet another blow. 10,000 factory jobs were lost after the World Bank imposed an economic recovery strategy that was to shake the sector.
Para o nosso caso, não correu bem. Aconteceu que a indústria, portanto, derrapou. Tivemos colapso.
In our case, it wasn't beneficial. The industry collapsed. Now the situation is back to normal. Yes, we should liberalise, but we should also support the industry.
Uma liberalização, mas é preciso que haja controle também da indústria.
Although the country still lags behind the top 3 producers, Ivory Coast, India and Vietnam, it is gradually closing the gap. Much of this rebirth is thanks to the Maputo government. Its National Institute of Cashew Promotion distributed cashew seedlings free of charge to small producers like Armando Balanca, whose business is booming.
The price per kilo is correct now. Before, we sold the kilo at 50 cents. Now, it's €1, so it's okay.
Balanca's yield earned him nearly €2,000 last year, nearly 3 times the minimum wage of the average farmer. And while competition remains fierce, Mozambique's production is making inroads once again and even attracting international investors.
An unlikely combination, but at the rhino orphanage in Limpopo, South Africa's northernmost province, rhinos and ballet go hand in hand. Ballet in the Bush, a dance initiative launched 4 years ago, aims to raise awareness of rhino poaching while showcasing both local and international ballet talent.
Ballet in South Africa is fighting a fight for survival. As much as rhinos in South Africa's plight is huge in fighting the poaching of rhinos.
The government has tightened legislation targeting poachers over the last decade, but despite a slight decrease, more than 1,000 rhinos were killed in 2017. Here at the world's first dedicated rhino orphanage, newly orphaned rhinos continue to arrive. Raising the rhino calves is costly. Up to $17,000 a month is needed to care for each one, and it's often a labor of love.
In the beginning, when they come to the orphanage, the girls are with them 24 hours a day. They sleep with them. They give them all the love and care in the world. And then the human context, we start cutting the human contact.
For one day each year, this rural idyll transforms into an international ballet stage. There are also workshops for teachers and children interested in this performing art. Being close to these endangered animals even inspires some dancers to become rhino ambassadors.
Some of us wouldn't know how bad it is if it wasn't for the ballet, this ballet show. Now because I am here, I've seen how bad this thing is. I know there is rhino poaching, but I wasn't aware that it's that bad.
Ballet in the Bush has grown in popularity since its inception. With plans already underway for next year's performance in Limpopo, it is hoped by then the plight of the animals they seek to help improves.
Ivorian journalist and author Serge Bilet's latest novel tells the 16th century story of Yasuke, the first black samurai. Yasuke was sent from Mozambique to India before ending up in Japan, where he caught the eye of the supreme commander. As a black African, Bilet says he wants to shine a light on parts of history that have been neglected in other accounts. Next week we take you to Kenya, where farmers are battling resistant fall armyworms, wreaking havoc to crops across the continent. That's all from us at Africa Weekly. Until next week.